right. The husband versus wife marriage challenge. Let me just say on the front end, you might be sitting here saying, I'm not married, I don't have to listen, this is wonderful. That's not the case at all. First of all, you may get married one day, and so this will be beneficial to you. Secondarily, you can make application for any of the things that we're going to be talking about throughout this series in any relationship that you're in. If you're a parent with a child, if you have friends in business relationships here at church, so don't think, well, this doesn't pertain to me. I may be speaking in terms of husband and wife, but the principles that underlie these things pretty much apply to any relationship. Now, if we talk about intimacy, you'll have to figure out exactly what that means. But I trust that you'll have enough insight to do that. But the husband and wife, the marriage challenge, because marriage can feel challenging, but it doesn't have to be. If we change our perspective, if we realize maybe there's something that I'm supposed to do to step up in this marriage, in this relationship in some way. And so we're going to be looking at this over the next number of weeks, and hopefully it will help you in your marriages and in your relationships. So, as I was thinking about this series, I was considering in the New Testament, there's many verses, about 59, that talk about what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to interact, how we're supposed to treat one another. They're the one another verses in the New Testament. I said there's about 59 of them. I'm not going to read them all, but I selected a few. I want to look at them real quick here this morning. Here's the first one in Romans chapter 12, verse 16. Live in harmony with one another. Here's the next one. Stop passing judgment on one another. Next. Greet one another with a kiss of love. I know the husband and wife are like, yeah, I like that one. Greet one another with a kiss of love. Comfort one another. Agree with one another. Live in peace. Serve one another in love. Spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Don't grumble about each other. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Just those few. If we began to apply those to our marriages, don't grumble about each other. Kiss one another. That would be awesome. Don't pass judgment on one another. Be encouraging to each other. Outdo one another in showing honor. It would revolutionize our marriages. It would change our families. It would change our homes. Last weekend, I officiated a wedding. And it was a blessing and an honor to be able to do that. And really, in that wedding, and almost everyone that I've ever officiated or attended, the couple promises something along the lines of, I will honor you. I will honor you. I'll cherish you till death do us part. Almost every couple makes that promise, makes that pledge, makes that vow in some way. And yet, as I watched this sweet young couple make that promise, I couldn't help but think about my own marriage after 25 years. And I wonder, do I still honor my wife the way I'm supposed to? And then I thought about this verse. Do I outdo her in showing honor? See, that verse right there is a flat-out God throwing down the gauntlet challenge. So if you are a competitive person by nature, then this is the verse for you. Are you outdoing your spouse in showing honor? It's a simple question. It's hard to answer. And that's the question we're going to begin to answer this morning. Are you outdoing your spouse in showing honor? Are you somehow or other more concerned about making sure they're honored than you? Now, part of understanding this is to understand what honor means. I think so often, at least for myself, I think in terms of honor as being respectful. Giving the person the seat of honor, if you're familiar with that term. Giving them the choice seating. Treating them with honor and respect. Opening the door for them. Being honoring in that way. And while that is part of the idea of honor, honor really is deeper than that. The word honor carries with it the idea of value, to value something, to give it great weight. So really, to show honor is to treat the other person as valuable, costly, or precious. It could be your spouse, it could be your children, teenagers, it can be your parents, it could be your co-workers. It's treating the other person as valuable, costly, or precious. Really, the opposite of that is the idea of dishonor. Dishonor means to give something little weight or little value. And you can dishonor people in a multiplicity of ways. You can dishonor them by rolling of the eyes, a huff, a harsh comment. You can dishonor them by not giving weight and value to their thoughts, to their opinions, to their ideas, belittling them, making them feel insignificant or stupid. Those are ways we dishonor because we're not treating that person with weight. We're not treating them as valuable. We're not treating them as precious. And that's what we're called to do. See, what I learned is this. Showing your spouse honor draws you closer. Showing your spouse honor draws you closer together. But showing anyone honor draws you closer. That's why we're called to honor God. When we honor God, it draws us closer to our Heavenly Father. When we honor our spouse, it draws us closer to our spouse. When we honor our children or our parents or you name it, it draws us closer. It draws us closer to them, and it draws us closer to the heart of our Heavenly Father because God calls us to honor. He wants us to honor those in our lives. But we don't often do it. So don't think in terms always of honor, think in terms of value. So if I were to ask you, and you don't have to raise your hands, nobody has to answer out loud, but if I were to say to you, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being 0, like I don't really value them at all, and 10 being, yes, they are the most valuable person in my life. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you value your spouse? Just think about that answer in your own mind. You can be honest or you can lie. It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to grade your test. Do you treat them as valuable, precious, costly? Now, if I were to take your spouse off to the side and ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how valuable does your spouse treat you? Would their answer line up with yours? My guess is most of us would say, I value them. I'm not going to lie and say it's a 10, but I'm a solid 9.9. Maybe if I'm an 8. We're somewhere, and I value that. I honor them. Excuse me. I think our spouses would often say, it's more like a 6, and they're being generous because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So if it's a 6, take 2 points off. It's a 4. If it's a 4, take 2, it's a 2. And if it's a 2, well, you are off the scale. So that's the issue. See, so often we believe we can honor them simply by saying it's what I feel in my heart. I feel honor towards them, but you can't do that. You have to show them honor. Honor is something that's demonstrated. It's something outward. Remember in Matthew 15, maybe you don't remember this, but Jesus is talking and his disciples are eating and the Pharisees get all upset because they didn't wash their hands properly, ceremonially before they ate, and they begin to quibble over what's clean and unclean. And Jesus basically says what goes into a man isn't what defiles him. What comes out is what defiles him. It's not simply the words that we speak, it's the actions that we do. And then Jesus quotes from Isaiah, and he says, you honor me with your lips, but your hearts are far from me. And that's really the issue. So often we say, I honor my wife, I honor my husband with our lips. But our hearts, our actions are far from them. They don't reflect the honor that we claim we have in our hearts. And so we give ourselves an 8, and they give us a 3, and that's the issue. So how do we begin to overcome it? It's by outdoing one another and showing honor, not having honor in your heart, not thinking honor in your mind, showing honor in your actions. So I want to look at some ways that we can begin to show honor to our spouses. Now, here's the difficulty. Every person is unique. Every marriage is unique. Every situation is unique. So these things are more principles. They are not actually things, go home and do this. Because you can do it and your spouse might not receive it as honor. So you have to figure out, what does this look like for my marriage? But really, it's what is inside of you that needs to begin to come out. So here's the first thing. See them through God's eyes. You need to see your spouse through God's eyes. It's so easy after a season of marriage to begin to see all the flaws. You see everything that's wrong in your spouse. You see the things you don't like. And you're going, why didn't I see that before we got married? Okay, I want to give you one reason. Brain damage. Brain damage. They have done studies that when a couple begins to date, to get into a romantic relationship, they have done studies on the brain and the endorphins that are released and the synaptic responses. And what they found is the brain is behaving as if someone has brain damage. And it normally lasts anywhere from 18 to 24 months. So inevitably what happens is after 12, 14, 16 months, everything's great. You don't see anything wrong with the person. They don't see anything wrong with you. You get married. And then that brain damage begins to go away. And you see things in your spouse that you never saw before. Have you ever been with a friend who's in a relationship? They're not married, but they're in a relationship. And you can see everything that's wrong with that person. And you go, you're not compatible. This is not copacetic. You shouldn't be in this relationship. And all they say to you is, no, you don't see them like I see them. You're right. And then, all of a sudden, they might be together, and it's about 18 months, and all of a sudden your friend goes to you and says, I can't be with this person. How could I have not seen this before? Because the brain damage wore off. So you get married, the brain damage wears off, and you see all these things, and you begin to become critical of your spouse. I don't like this about them. I don't like that about them. It's the same person you fell in love with. You're just seeing them more fully. And so rather than simply seeing them more fully from your perspective, begin to see them more fully from God's. Here's how David writes it in the Psalms. He says, you, God, you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Now, if you stop right there and think about your spouse and apply that to them, your wife is fearfully and wonderfully made. Your husband is fearfully and wonderfully made. He is fantastic. If he's got no hair, he's wonderfully made. That is God's gift to you. So one thing you can do is begin to pray every day. A simple little prayer. Heavenly Father, help me to see my wife. Help me to see my husband the way you see them. Help me to see them that way. And all of a sudden, who they are comes alive to you. Now, here's one thing I've learned. As you begin to do that, you'll begin to show them honor. Because you'll begin to feel the conviction of the Holy Spirit. So when your spouse says something to you, and you begin to see them as God sees them, fearfully, wonderfully made, someone in His image, and they ask you to do something, your default may be to roll your eyes in the back of your head until they look like pinballs. And all of a sudden you have to realize, I can't do that. That's not showing honor. Rolling my eyes, huffing, sighing, muttering under my breath, saying all these things, that's not honoring to my spouse. That's not honoring who God made them. That's not seeing them the way God sees them. And so you begin to control those outward actions. And that begins to show them honor. Here's what I promise you. If you do that long enough, and if you say, God, I want to show my spouse honor, eventually God will say, great. I am glad that outwardly you're showing them honor. Now, you're not rolling the eyes in your face. I want you to stop rolling the eyes in your heart. And that's when it gets hard. Oh, I can control my tongue. I don't have to mutter. I don't have to sigh. But inside, you're going, and your eyes are rolling in your heart like crazy. As you begin to honor, this is what happens. Honor moves from your eyes to your heart. Honor moves from what you show them externally to now how you feel about them internally. How you are responding to them internally. So there's not this angst, there's not this turmoil, there's not this constant tension. So see them how God sees them. The next is this. Appreciate their unique qualities. So this takes that previous idea and takes it farther. It means that you have to begin to see that who they are is so precious. Remember, honor, one of the ideas of honor is precious, to treat something as precious. They're so unique. Okay, they don't do things like you. They don't think like you. They don't process information like you do. You know what's wonderful about that? Is that you didn't marry you. Because I know sometimes you think, I can't stand myself. Well, if you married yourself, you'd still be frustrated. So you don't want somebody who's like you. You need to embrace the uniqueness of that person, and that means their good points and their failures, their faults, the things that they struggle with, the things they don't do as well as you would wish they would do. Here's how Paul puts it in Ephesians. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Sometimes we get so frustrated that our spouse doesn't do things the way we want them to do. They're not good at certain things. They're not gifted in certain ways. And instead of honoring the unique person that they are, we dishonor them by devaluing who God made them, the unique person that God made them to be. And part of valuing the uniqueness of them is allowing them to fail. I believe so many marriages are damaged because one spouse or the other refuses to let their husband or their wife fail, especially early in the marriage. They actually think they're protecting them. I don't want them to mess up. I don't want them to do something wrong. I don't want them to feel like a failure. They are not capable of doing this, and so you don't let them try. But they feel devalued, they feel belittled, they feel inconsequential, and they stop. They stop trying, they stop wanting to try, and you think you're protecting them. Remember, this is a lifelong commitment. They stop trying after 12 months. At 12 years or 32 years, you say, please try something, and they say, no. Why would I try? You told me in words and actions that I am not capable. And so you actually devalue that person. Let them fail. Now, I'm not talking about moral issues. I'm not talking about sin issues. Of course, if you see them doing something that's self-destructive, then you pull them aside and go, this is going to kill you. It's going to kill us. You can't do that. I'm talking about things around the house, things in the context of relationships, trying new endeavors. Let them try. Allow them to be unique, to be imperfect, and to grow. That is the key. Allow them to be unique, to be imperfect, and to grow. That's how you honor them. It's not always easy. Sometimes you have to say, well, you made a mess of that. But don't say, you say we. Well, we'll get through this. We'll be okay. It's not the end of the world. Here's the next one. Defer to their interests. If you want to honor someone, defer to their interests. So many marriages are all about positioning yourself to get what you want. It's called manipulation. I got to get what I want. I'll do it subtly. I'll do it in a very gentle way. They'll never know they're being manipulated. You know, the better manipulator you are, the worse it is. Because you can even fool yourself that you're manipulating. I know for me, listen, that's something I've wrestled with my whole life. I could make my mama dance on a string. I get what I want, and I've convinced myself, no, I'm just being a good son. And that carried over into my marriage. I've had to work real hard to say, I don't want to be that guy. And it's not always easy. So I have to defer to what does Jamie need? What's important to her? What's her interest? What would be valuable to her, whether it's what I want or not? Here's how Paul puts it. In humility, count others more significant than yourselves. Let each one of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Put their interest above yours. You say, okay, I get that. Does that mean like going to the restaurant they want? Does that mean going to see the movies they want, watching the television shows they want? It can be. But it goes deeper than that. It's about getting on your knees and serving them. It's saying, how do I serve you? How do I do something that's meaningful for you? What is it? Okay, great. The restaurant, you like it, you don't. It's a meal. What is it? How can I serve you day in and day out and put you before myself? That's what Jesus modeled for us. The Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life. So we have to learn, how do I do that? See, one way that honor is shown, and nothing shows honor more as servanthood. Nothing shows honor as much as serving. Getting down and saying, I want to put your interest before my own. What do you need? It means, gentlemen, you come home, you've worked all day, maybe your wife is a stay-at-home homemaker, homeschooling the kids, and you come home and you're tired and you're exhausted and you just want to veg out. But you know this would be meaningful to your wife. Well, you get out of your sorry old way and you go and do that. Boy, you want that flower bed taken care of? I'll be happy to do that. I don't care, I'm tired and my back hurts. I'm going to serve you. Don't you think Jesus was tired and his back hurt after he got whipped and he still hung on the cross? He still hung on the cross. He still served. We need to learn to do that. Wives, you've been home with those kids all day. Maybe you work outside the home and you're exhausted and you're frantic and you pick the kids up from daycare and you're home now and your husband walks in and he says, I want to watch the game. And you're going, the game? I'm going to strangle you. You know what, baby? Watch the game. And can I get you something to drink? And you begin to serve. And if you outdo one another in showing honor, nobody's going to be taken advantage of. That's the challenge. The next is this. Listen to them and engage. Listen to them and engage. It's so simple to forget this. How do you listen? How do you engage? Gentlemen, we can be really bad at listening. We think we're listening because we're nodding our head and we grunt. Yep. We have no idea what she said. We've got our phone going. We got the TV on. We've got everything going. Now, it's because sometimes men just don't like to listen. Women, on the other hand, it's not that you don't like to listen. It's that you you're like the movie theater with 16 movies. But they're not in separate theaters. They're just 16 movies playing at once. And so you want to listen to your husband, but you got the kids pulling on you, you got this going on, you got dinner being cooked, you're trying to order something online, and you've got your mother-in-law walking in the front door. And he's trying to tell you something, and you're going, yeah. And at that moment, you've lost him. He says, you don't care. Why should I talk if you won't listen? See, we can't do 16 movie theaters at once. We can do one. It's called that phone. So, we think if you're not listening, if you're not giving me your undivided attention, then you're not listening to me. And so we just stop. So listen and engage. I love the picture of this in the book of Revelation. Jesus is speaking, and this is what he says. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Now, I always find this interesting. He says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice, not if anyone hears me banging on the door. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me. It's not just enough to listen to Jesus' voice. You have to engage. You have to respond. You have to interact with what he's saying. And when it comes to our marriages, it's not just enough to sit there and listen and grunt, yeah, I heard you. Engaging means entering into the conversation. Engagement is participation in the conversation. Saying back to them what they said. Hey, if I'm hearing you right, it seems like, boy, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Let's talk about that. That is how people feel honored. When you not just listen, but you engage in the conversation. Here's the next. Defend them. Now, we typically think of this as the men. We're going to defend them. Well, the knight in shining armor, I'm going to fight for her. Listen to me. I'm not saying there aren't times we have to do that, but defending our spouses is so much more than that. It's so much richer than that. See, believe it or not, guys, your wives can actually defend themselves. I have tried to wrestle with my wife, and she's got moves. I'm telling you what. You think, she could bend fingers and snap, scream. I'm like, forget it. I'm not even going there. So they can defend themselves. It's not about protecting. It's about standing alongside. It's saying, I'm going to walk through this with you. Because it is lonely walking through life alone. It's lonely walking through hard seasons of life alone. And it's most lonely walking through seasons of life alone when your spouse is laying in the bed next to you. But you feel like he's not defending you, or you feel like she's not defending you. You feel like you're there, but you're alone. That's not what God wants for us. Here's how it puts it in Galatians. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Carry one another's burdens. It's about saying, I am going to walk through this with you. You don't have to go through these hard times and these hard seasons alone. I'm going to be there with you. I'm not going to turn my back on you. God promises, I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. My covenant commitment to you when we got married is for better, for worse, richer, poor, till death do us part. So I'm going to walk through this with you as well. And I'll be there with you. I'll help you carry this. You don't have to feel alone. That's how you defend them. It's not about wielding a sword. It's about saying, I'm going to put my arm around you and we'll walk through this together. Defending is not just protecting. It's ensuring they are secure. Gentlemen, if you want to honor your wife, make sure she feels secure emotionally. Make sure she feels secure relationally. Make sure she feels secure physically. Tell her every day, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever married. You can't go wrong. Tell her she's gorgeous. Tell her she still knocks your socks off. Make sure she feels secure. Wives, make sure your husbands, you are the man. You are awesome. You're wonderful. I so appreciate all you do. I can't believe how you figured that out. My wife is great at this. I'll do something, it seems like, anyone could have done this. And she'll beam, smile. Oh, I don't know how you could figure that out. You're so brilliant. I said, I flipped the light switch. But boy, afterward, I'm like, I'm the man. Nobody can flip a light switch like me. But that's how you defend them. It also means that they know that you'll always have their back. You're not going to make them look bad in front of other people. You're not going to talk about them behind their back. You're not going to badmouth them. You will defend them. I remember when I worked in IBM, there was a guy I worked with, and we had become friends. And we knew each other. He'd been over to our house a number of different times, and we're eating lunch. And we're talking about my family. We're talking about Jamie and I and our family. And my mind was still there. That's what we were still talking about. He pivoted the conversation to a completely different topic, a relationship he was in. I thought he was still talking about me and my relationship, my family, my wife, and he says, she's such a, and he uses a word. And it took me a second. I kind of smiled, and then I said, wait, what? He's across the table. I took the table, and I slammed it into him. This guy is 6'2". I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter. But man, he'd say that about my wife. I slammed it into him. I grabbed him, and he said, what are you doing? I said, don't you ever talk about my wife like that. He said, I wasn't. I was talking about so-and-so. And I said, oh, well, yeah, she is. But that's one way you defend them. Don't join in the making fun of your spouse and cutting up on them. If everybody else is putting their wife down, you make sure your wife, they all wish they were married to her. If they're all making their husbands look like donkeys, you say, well, my husband is the cat's meow. He is the best. You wish you had him. I'm sorry you got that guy, but man, my husband is the best. That's how you honor. Here's another. Treat them with affection. Treat them with affection. Now, Remember we read, greet one another with a kiss of love. And affection is how we show our emotions. Now, I'm not talking about, it doesn't have to be gratuitous, public displays of affection. I know some guys get really uncomfortable with that. But I don't know any guy who, when they were dating, didn't mind at least holding a hand. I don't know any guy who, when they were dating or they were engaged, didn't mind putting their arm around her shoulder. So affection, it's about those things, holding hands, snuggling, hugging, giving a kiss, giving a back rub. It's about those ways in which you show your emotions to your spouse. Guys, you need to show it to your wives, and wives, you need to show it to your husbands. You need to demonstrate that to them. You're still the guy that I love. Let me give you a back rub. Oh man, your muscles, they're stronger today than they ever were. It may feel like marshmallow. You just lie. Yes. Oh, baby, you've been doing push-ups, huh? No, but thanks. You know, being affectionate is so important. It shows that person that you honor them. Remember this. You have committed to only ever show this type of affection to one other person as long as you both shall live. So do the best you can. Just say, hey, I want to do this. I can't do this with anybody else. I get to do it with you. So show that affection. In Ephesians it says this, be kind to one another, tender-hearted. That's the whole idea, be affectionate. Now here's the amazing thing about showing affection. Not only does it honor your spouse, not only does it build a deeper respect, a deeper closeness between the two of you, it has a lasting effect in your family for generations to come. See, the affection you show your spouse will affect your children's marriages. I see guys, they don't know how to smile, hold a hand, give a hug. And I can tell you, I can almost guarantee you that their dad didn't know how to smile, hold a hand, give a hug. If you want your sons to grow up to be distant and not know how to do those things, keep doing exactly what you're doing. If you want your sons to be more than that, well, then you just have to get outside of what's comfortable for you and show affection. It's the same way, women, for your daughters. You want your daughters to kind of feel like, whoa, you shouldn't do that, and this is weird. And then you should hang all over your husband. I'm just telling you what. You know, he walks in the door, you wrap your arms around him, you smother him in kisses. He may say this is weird. Your kids are going to go, it's disgusting. They'll thank you for it one day. First of all, how did you think you got here, teenagers? Second of all, one day they'll say, that's what I want in my marriage. Mom, I want to be so in love when we have kids the same way my mom and dad were. And you show it to them. You honor them with affection. So, that's what honor looks like. It's something you need to show. It's something you need to put in practice. It's something you need to do regularly and consistently. And you need to outdo one another in showing honor. It's something that we're challenged by God to do. And we can do it. Now, here's one thing I've learned. You can waste hours doing lots of things, but you will never waste 1 minute showing honor. You'll never waste your time when you show honor. It's that precious, it's that important, it's that valuable to God. And God says, if you'll show honor, I will honor you. If you'll show honor to others in your life, your husband, your wife, your kids, your parents, your coworkers, your neighbors, if you'll show honor to them, I'll show honor to you. You'll never waste your time. And I know what some of you are thinking, because I know some of your marriages are struggling. I know some of you, your spouses might not even be here this morning. And you're going, so if I show honor to them, but they don't show honor back to me, then what's the point? Here's the point. You're doing it as unto the Lord. Paul writes to the Colossians and he says this, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord, not for men. I'm going to show honor to my spouse not to gain their approval, but to gain God's. Because when I honor, I'm never wasting my time. When I honor others, God will honor me. So here's my question for you as we prepare to wrap up this morning. Will you accept the challenge of outdoing your spouse in showing honor? Are you willing to step up and accept the challenge? It's easy to say, it's much more difficult to show. So here's what I've done. I have put together an honor score sheet. And you think I'm kidding. When I walked in this morning and showed the team, they said, "Really?" I said, "Really." If you're willing to accept the challenge, on your way out, grab one of these. It says Husband-Wife Honor Challenge. And it is Monday through Saturday. So it starts tomorrow, it ends Saturday. And on the top is the ways that you have showed honor or they have showed honor. And on the bottom is when they have showed dishonor or you feel dishonored by them or you feel you've showed dishonor. And so for Monday, keep your score. Make a little check mark. Every time that you showed honor, every time you did something that you believe was honoring, keep score. Write it down 6 times. And then write down what they were. If there's not a lot of space there, you got a whole back of the card. Write down what it was. I showed honor by flushing the toilet, Every time they showed you honor, they did something that you believed was honoring, give them a point. They showed honor by locking the front door. And I really appreciated that. Whatever it is, keep track. Then on the bottom, I know I messed up. I was dishonoring when I did this. Give a point there. Same for your spouse. When the week is done, add up the top, add up the bottom, and then subtract the bottom from the top. That's your honor score. Do the same for your spouse. This is how you decide if... Now, you're doing this by yourself. Please hear me. This is not a team thing. You're doing your own, husbands, and wives, you do your own. Don't share, don't compare, don't do anything. At the end of the week, husbands, you're going to say, I had a score of 75, she had a score of 2, I won. Wives are going to say, I had a score of 7,829, he had negative 10, I won. But you're not going to compare, just fill it out. Write down those things. Okay, this is a self-exercise. Now, here's the challenge. After you've done that, if you have the courage, bring it back with you next Sunday. If you bring it back, I'm not going to make you share it. I'm not going to make you read it. If you bring it back, you may have an opportunity. I may have a trophy to give out to the winner. No, I may have something to give out to someone who brings it back. But there's a next step that I want to talk about next week, what to do with these filled out cards, if you're willing to accept the challenge. So I'm going to ask if you'd stand with me.